In 1989, the world lost Lucille Ball, and tragically, she passed away with hardly anyone by her side. The same woman who once captivated 44 million viewers each Monday evening in her heyday spent her final years in deep isolation. Her opulent homes echoed with emptiness, inhabited only by employed staff. Her children stayed away, and one by one, her well-known friends from Hollywood drifted out of her life. How did America's most cherished comedic icon become a shadow of her former self, abandoned and alone? The heartbreaking truth lies in a mix of financial struggles, betrayal, and a buried family secret that unraveled everything she worked so hard to create. Lucille Ball's early life was marked by sorrow. At just 3 years old, she experienced the devastation of losing her father to typhoid fever. It happened in February 1915 when her father was only 27, and her mother was expecting another child, Lucille's younger brother. The family had frequently relocated due to her father's job with the telephone company, hopping between states like New York, New Jersey, and Montana, before finally settling in Michigan, where tragedy struck. After her father's passing, life spiraled downward. Her mother, overwhelmed with grief, couldn't care for the children. As a result, Lucille was sent to live with an aunt, while her baby brother was taken in by their grandparents. Lucille would later describe her early years as being defined by misfortune and heartache. One particular incident remained etched in her memory forever. Just moments after her mother broke the news of her father's death, a framed picture inexplicably fell off the wall. Then she noticed a group of gray sparrows pecking at the kitchen window. That eerie detail haunted her for the rest of her life. From that day forward, she developed an intense fear. Not so much of live birds, but of pictures and images of them. Even as an adult and a household name, she would refuse to stay in hotel rooms decorated with bird motifs. That irrational fear lingered until her final days. As life started to stabilize slightly, misfortune struck again. Around the age of 12, a tragic accident occurred in her backyard. Her stepfather had carefully set up a target shooting range with a .22 rifle, strictly instructing the children to shoot only toward an open field. One day, an 8-year-old neighborhood boy, who shouldn't have been there, suddenly appeared. Just as another child fired a shot, the young boy unexpectedly stood up and was struck. The bullet hit his spine, leaving him paralyzed for life. His family sued, won the case, and Lucille's family lost nearly everything: their home, belongings, and even their insurance coverage. Her grandfather, consumed by guilt, never worked again. Forced to leave town, the family was shattered. Lucille would later say that one single moment had destroyed their entire world. When she was 14, another dramatic chapter began. Lucille fell in love with Johnny DeVita, a 21-year-old known around town as a bit of a bad influence. Her mother strongly disapproved and, in a last-ditch effort to reroute her daughter's future, scraped together enough money to send her to a prestigious drama school in New York City. But things didn't go as planned. Lucille found herself in the same class as Bette Davis, who quickly excelled, while Lucille floundered. The instructors didn't hold back. They bluntly told her she lacked talent. According to some accounts, they even returned her mother's tuition money, saying Lucille didn't have what it took. Years later, Lucille admitted that the only thing she learned there was how to be afraid. Yet, instead of letting the rejection break her, it fueled her determination. She returned to New York in 1928 with renewed ambition. But just as her momentum began to build, illness derailed everything. She was struck by rheumatic fever, which left her bedridden for nearly 2 years, unable to work or pursue her dreams. Many would have given up. Lucille didn't. She reflected on the criticism she had received and decided to prove everyone wrong. Once she recovered, she returned with an unshakable focus. It was during this time that she landed a modeling job with the famed fashion designer Hattie Carnegie. This was a turning point. Carnegie saw something special in Lucille but insisted she bleach her brunette hair blonde. Without hesitation, she did it. Modeling transformed her. It taught her grace, presence, and how to command attention without speaking. Though the stage remained her ultimate dream, modeling gave her skills that drama school had not. Throughout the 1930s and into the early 1940s, Lucille took whatever acting work she could find. The roles weren't glamorous. Background characters, forgettable leads, slapstick performances. She acted in more than 75 films, yet Hollywood never elevated her beyond its lower tiers. Industry insiders dubbed her the Queen of the Bs, a nod to her regular appearance in B movies. Though she made light of the title, calling herself the Queen of the B+, it stung. No matter how hard she worked, casting directors tried to mold her into narrow archetypes. Flapper, glamour girl, comic relief. She kept going anyway, building invaluable experience and developing a keen understanding of what made characters work. She learned every corner of the business and patiently honed the talents that would one day allow her to redefine the screen on her own terms. In 1940, fate introduced her to Desi Arnaz on the set of Too Many Girls. By then, Lucille was already a familiar name, while Desi was a charismatic young bandleader just breaking into Hollywood. From the moment they met, the chemistry was undeniable. Desi approached her with a bold line. "Do you know how to Roomba?" He danced with her and teased, "I can teach you fast, but only if you go out with me tonight." Lucille was instantly captivated. She later admitted that she had never fallen in love so fast. Desi was energetic, magnetic, and daring, and Lucille was all in. Their co-workers took notice. Some even placed bets on how long the whirlwind romance would last. It seemed too passionate, too quick to survive. But Lucille couldn't resist. She admitted he scared her a little, with his wild energy and unpredictability, but that only added to the attraction. After filming ended, they maintained their relationship with costly long-distance phone calls. Lucille estimated she spent around $29,000 just talking to him. That November, both happened to be in New York, Desi for a stage performance and Lucille for a magazine interview. In that interview, she declared the relationship wasn't meant to last. But later that very day, after discovering Desi had been seeing another woman, she stormed over to confront him. That confrontation ended in an unexpected twist. Desi proposed. They drove to Connecticut that same night and eloped, just 6 months after meeting. Their sudden marriage raised eyebrows. In the 1940s, interracial relationships faced intense scrutiny. Studios didn't believe a Cuban man and a white woman would be accepted, on or off screen. When Lucille later insisted that Desi play her husband in the TV adaptation of her radio show, CBS resisted. But Lucille wouldn't budge. Looking back, she called the elopement the most daring thing I ever did. Even her closest friends were skeptical. "They gave us 6 months. I gave us 6 weeks," she joked. And yet, the cracks began to show early. Desi was constantly on the road with his band, while Lucille was filming from dawn to dusk. Their lives moved on parallel tracks. Complicating things further, Desi came from a background where infidelity was normalized. His own father had taken him to a brothel at age 12. Though he insisted he was emotionally loyal, his affairs devastated Lucille. His increasing drinking made things worse. People had warned her. Desi had a reputation. By 1944, just 4 years in, Lucille had had enough. She filed for divorce. Their arguments were fierce and frequent. Their daughter Lucy later described her childhood as being full of shouting and chaos. But the divorce didn't stick. After a fiery reunion, they reconciled, a pattern that would repeat throughout their relationship. Hoping that working together might save their marriage, they launched one last idea. In 1950, CBS expressed interest in adapting Lucille Ball's popular radio show, My Favorite Husband, for television. In the early 1950s, CBS expressed interest in adapting My Favorite Husband into a television series. But Lucille Ball gave them one non-negotiable condition. Her real-life husband, Desi Arnaz, had to portray her on-screen spouse. The network was hesitant. Desi was Cuban, had a thick accent, and didn't match the all-American image executives believed viewers expected. At that time, interracial marriages were still taboo on television and illegal in several states. But Lucille stood firm. To convince the network of their viability as a duo, she and Desi launched a live variety act, performing comedic sketches and musical routines across the country. Audiences adored them. Critics applauded their chemistry. Their act was such a runaway success that CBS eventually relented. That decision gave birth to I Love Lucy. Bringing the show to life, however, was a logistical challenge. CBS wanted to shoot in New York, the hub of television production. But Lucille refused to leave Los Angeles. That choice would go on to reshape the television industry. Collaborating with producer Jess Oppenheimer, Desi pioneered a 3-camera filming technique before a live audience. It was a revolutionary idea. They found a Hollywood studio that could accommodate the setup and satisfy fire codes, and with CBS's backing, they turned it into a working set. This technique allowed actors to perform scenes continuously, much like a play, while capturing genuine audience reactions. On top of that, Desi insisted the show be recorded on high-resolution 35mm film, instead of the cheaper kinescope format most shows used. That decision proved visionary. Lucille and Desi accepted lower salaries in exchange for retaining ownership of the episodes through their company, Desilu. The crisp quality of those recordings made reruns possible, helping I Love Lucy become one of the first shows to achieve massive syndication success. In 1952, another challenge arose. Lucille became pregnant with their second child. At the time, pregnancy was considered inappropriate to depict or even mention on television. Both CBS and sponsor Philip Morris objected. But Lucille and Desi refused to conceal it. Instead, the writers cleverly worked her condition into the storyline. Avoiding direct language like pregnant, they opted for terms like expecting or with child, and even used the French phrase enceinte in one episode. Religious advisors reviewed the scripts to ensure sensitivity. When the episode featuring Lucy's on-screen childbirth aired in January 1953, the same day she delivered her baby in real life, 44 million viewers tuned in. Reports even suggested that water usage dropped nationwide during the broadcast because people didn't want to miss a second. From there, I Love Lucy became a cultural phenomenon. For 4 of its 6 seasons, it ranked as the most-watched show in America. By the time it concluded in 1957, it still topped the ratings, an achievement only shared by The Andy Griffith Show and Seinfeld. The series earned 5 Emmy Awards. Lucille was named Best Comedian, while Desi and Oppenheimer also took home honors. Even decades after it ended, the show reached new generations. Reruns aired globally. In 2012, it was voted the greatest television show of all time in a national poll. The following year, a colorized Christmas episode drew over 8 million viewers in a single night. More than 60 years later, their work continued to captivate audiences. Behind the scenes, Lucille and Desi built Desilu Productions, transforming it into the biggest independent TV studio in America within a few years. They acquired RKO Studios for $6 million and began producing hits like The Untouchables, The Andy Griffith Show, and The Dick Van Dyke Show. Their empire was founded on love and a shared vision. But by 1960, their marriage came to an end. In a surprising move, Lucille bought out Desi's shares for $2.5 million, making her the sole head of Desilu. No woman had ever run a major Hollywood studio. Skeptics dismissed her as just a comic actress, incapable of managing an empire. But Lucille proved them all wrong. While starring in The Lucy Show, she simultaneously handled the studio's executive responsibilities, budgeting, negotiating, and strategic planning. She even launched a syndication arm within Desilu, foreseeing the long-term value of reruns when few others did. Then, in 1966, she made one of her boldest bets. She greenlit 2 new shows that seemed risky, expensive, and unconventional: Star Trek and Mission Impossible. Her advisors were wary. Some say she misunderstood Star Trek, believing it to be about celebrities on tour. But despite that, she sensed potential, and she was right. Both became television classics. By early 1967, Desilu had bounced back. Lucille sold the studio for $17 million, leaving with an enormous profit and a legacy as a trailblazer in TV production. Long before all this, she and Desi had made a quiet yet groundbreaking decision that forever altered television. CBS had initially wanted I Love Lucy filmed live in New York, but the couple insisted on staying in California. In exchange for a pay cut, they got permission to shoot on 35mm film. That single decision paved the way for the syndication industry and kept I Love Lucy earning money for generations. To date, it's estimated the show has generated over $700 million from reruns. Lucille Ball wasn't just a comedian. She revolutionized television by trusting her instincts, embracing risk, and standing her ground. In September 1953, a scandal nearly derailed her career. It began with a vague remark made by gossip columnist Walter Winchell during a national radio broadcast. He cryptically asked, "Which red-headed TV star was once a communist?" He didn't say her name, but everyone knew he meant Lucille Ball. By morning, the press had swarmed her and Desi's home. The Los Angeles Herald-Express ran a glaring headline in red ink: Lucille Ball named Red. The accusation spread quickly. In the midst of Cold War paranoia, being associated with communism was career suicide. People were losing jobs and being blacklisted. I Love Lucy had 44 million viewers and millions invested by sponsors. Everything was at stake. It all stemmed from something Lucille had done in 1936. She registered to vote as a communist. But the reason wasn't ideological. Her grandfather, who had raised her, was a strong supporter of workers' rights. To please him, she filled out the form. That choice returned to haunt her 2 decades later. She cooperated fully with investigators, explaining that she'd never attended any communist meetings or been politically active. Though someone once claimed a meeting occurred at her house in the 1930s, Lucille insisted she had no knowledge of it. Her brother backed her up. It had all been an attempt to maintain family harmony. While Lucille faced interrogations and fear, Desi Arnaz sprang into action. He invited journalists into their home and laid everything out. He made it clear: Lucille was not and had never been a communist. Then, in a bold move, he addressed the situation during a live taping. With reporters in the audience and tension high, Desi walked onto the stage and made a declaration that would echo through TV history. During the filming of a new season's premiere, Desi Arnaz stood in front of a live audience filled with reporters, holding a telephone up to the microphone. On the line was none other than J. Edgar Hoover, then head of the FBI. In a booming voice, Hoover clarified for everyone listening: Lucille Ball was not, and never had been, a communist. The announcement was met with thunderous applause. The energy in the room shifted instantly. Relief, validation, and triumph filled the air. Desi, visibly emotional, wasn't done. He looked out over the crowd, his voice trembling slightly as he said, "Now I want you to meet my favorite redhead. The only thing red about her is her hair. And even that's not real." The joke landed perfectly, dissolving the tension that had filled the studio. With tears brimming in her eyes, Lucille stepped onto the stage and into the spotlight. The audience erupted with cheers. Not long after, Lucille Ball was named Woman of the Year. She and Desi were honored with an invitation to dine at the White House. The scandal that had once threatened her entire career was now a testament to her integrity, strength, and the power of truth, with a little humor sprinkled in. After her emotional and painful divorce from Desi Arnaz in 1960, Lucille Ball, then 49 years old, had no intention of marrying again. She was worn down and heartbroken. But fate had other plans. One evening in New York, a friend arranged a blind date for her with a nightclub comic named Gary Morton. At the time, Lucille was starring in her only Broadway show, Wildcat. Their date was at a simple pizza place. Not a glamorous setting, but something clicked. Gary was 13 years her junior and claimed he'd never watched I Love Lucy, since he was always working when it aired. This impressed Lucille. He wasn't blinded by her fame. They began dating, and 11 months later, they were married in an intimate ceremony attended by only 40 guests. But as they left the church, a huge crowd had gathered outside to cheer them on. In letters written afterward, Lucille couldn't stop praising Gary: kind, funny, handsome, and endlessly supportive. Their marriage lasted nearly 28 years, right up until her passing. When they met, Lucille had just launched Wildcat, a project she was deeply invested in both emotionally and financially through her company, Desilu Productions. However, things did not go as planned. A severe snowstorm delayed the opening because delivery trucks carrying stage sets were stuck on the highway. Audiences expected her to be the same zany character from television, Lucy Ricardo, but the role in Wildcat was drastically different. Trying to meet expectations, Lucille began modifying her performance, adding TV-style gags and expressions. Unfortunately, the show didn't win over critics, and the pressure took a toll on her health. Illness forced multiple show cancellations. One evening in April, Lucille collapsed on stage. Attempts were made to put the production on hold, but the musicians' union demanded payment even during the pause. The costs became unsustainable, and after just 171 performances, Wildcat closed permanently. Meanwhile, troubles were also brewing at home. In 1970, her teenage son, Desi Arnaz Jr., began dating actress Patty Duke, who was 23. Ironically, Lucille had been 6 years older than Desi Sr. when they married. but she was furious about her son's relationship. She issued strict ultimatums: end the romance or be disinherited and kicked out. Desi Jr. believed his mother was primarily trying to safeguard the family's image. Patty Duke later said she bore no resentment but admitted she was hurt. She believed she was being sincere and didn't deserve such rejection. At the time, she was also navigating mental health struggles and was romantically involved with others, including actor John Astin. Despite the complications, her relationship with Desi Jr. persisted. Then came a sensational twist. Patty became pregnant shortly after marrying a man named Michael Tell, a marriage that lasted only 13 days. Rumors swirled that Desi Jr. was the real father. The speculation horrified Lucille, who had spent years building a pristine public image. Although Patty never explicitly confirmed the rumor, she didn't correct it either. The media frenzy intensified when she gave birth to her son Sean in 1971. His name was withheld at the hospital to protect his privacy. While Desi Sr. and Lucy, Desi Jr.'s sister, visited the newborn, Lucille did not. Years later, DNA tests confirmed that Michael Tell was indeed Sean's biological father. Nonetheless, Desi Jr. remained involved in Sean's life. Despite everything, they shared a meaningful connection. But the public damage was already done. The scandal had played out just as Lucille had feared. After I Love Lucy wrapped in 1957, many assumed Lucille Ball's career would wane. But she wasn't ready to fade away. In 1962, she debuted a new sitcom, The Lucy Show, which became an even greater success. By 1968, still at her peak, Lucille made a shocking decision. She walked away. Having sold Desilu, she no longer wanted to continue working on a series she didn't own. She launched a fresh production company and introduced another new series, Here's Lucy. This show was deeply personal, starring her real-life children, Lucy and Desi Jr., as her on-screen kids. She had made it clear she wouldn't proceed without them. Here's Lucy tackled contemporary topics like civil rights, youth culture, and social change. It was her effort to connect with a new era. But by 1973, ratings started slipping. Her daughter left for a Broadway tour, and Lucille considered returning to film after dominating TV for 23 years. Behind the scenes, personal rifts began to show. Her closest friend and longtime co-star Vivian Vance had left The Lucy Show years earlier. The commute from her East Coast home to the Los Angeles studio was exhausting. She had requested more input and better pay, but when that didn't materialize, she departed. Lucille was devastated. She admitted privately that she couldn't imagine continuing without Vivian. The show's format had to be entirely restructured in her absence. Years passed, and in 1985, at the age of 74, Lucille Ball made a bold move. She took on a dramatic role as a homeless woman in the TV movie Stone Pillow. Determined to prove she could do more than comedy, she succeeded. Viewership was strong. Encouraged, she attempted one final sitcom, Life with Lucy, but audiences had moved on. Critics were harsh, and after just 8 episodes, the series was canceled, the first time a Lucille Ball project had been pulled mid-season. The failure hit hard. She began stepping back from public life. Her last TV appearance came at the 1989 Oscars, standing beside Bob Hope and receiving a heartfelt standing ovation. Just a month later, Lucille Ball passed away. But before that final curtain call, something quietly powerful took place in 1986. Her ex-husband, Desi Arnaz, was dying of cancer. Despite their divorce decades earlier, their emotional bond remained unshaken. Lucille visited him frequently. Their daughter later recalled how strong their connection still was. On November 30th, 1986, the day that would have marked their 46th wedding anniversary, Lucille called Desi. He was weak, barely able to speak, but she held the phone to his ear and repeated, "I love you." He nodded and softly replied, "I love you too, honey." With his remaining strength, he added, "Good luck with your show." 2 days later, Desi passed, with Lucille at his side. 3 years later, on April 18th, 1989, Lucille Ball was rushed to the hospital with intense chest pain. Doctors discovered a tear in her aorta, the main artery of her heart. She underwent a long and risky surgery, and for a brief time it seemed she might recover. Fans from across the country flooded her with letters and cards. But just 8 days later, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her back. Her body gave out. Doctors worked tirelessly for almost an hour, but she could not be revived. Lucille Ball passed away on April 26, 1989, at the age of 77. The world lost more than just a beloved entertainer. It lost a pioneer, a fearless innovator, and a woman who defied odds at every turn. Through humor, heart, and determination, Lucille ensured she would never be forgotten.